it's not something that can be implemented overnight. So Ed, could you step us through when you're working hands-on with a particular firm in your mentoring capacity? Where do you start in terms of addressing this topic? And what are the simple little things that you get firms to implement from the very beginning to start moving towards a sort of well-oiled bottom-up managed team?
It really depends on the size of the firm, because if it's quite small and the partners are still a client manager, so they're still quite hands-on with the clients. The first thing that I get them to do is to do no grinding work. Some of them still want to jump in there and do the grinding work.
Okay.
And if you do that, you're taking time away from your clients, and you should be spending time with your clients. The problem with delegation is that if you don't hire the right person and give them the right training, and they'll make a mistake, you'll get discouraged by it, and you'll feel like, oh, if you want to do it right, you just got to do it yourself. And you have this tendency to just jump in and do it. And that's the worst thing you can do, because you're not investing into your balance sheet if you just do it yourself. I call it a P&L play.
Right.
So yes, it's quick if you did it, but when you're 65 years old, you're still doing it if you don't invest into training somebody else to do that work. So if the practice is small, then it'll take a little bit longer, because they're still pretty much hands-on with the clients. But I emphasize the fact that when you're managing traffic, there's two types of traffic. The first type of traffic is communication, meetings, advisory, that kind of phone calls, that kind of traffic. And then the second type of traffic is your productivity traffic, getting the work done. And, you need to hire somebody to start taking that off you and spending the time, with the clients. Then you get to bigger clients, bigger firms where, they're doing $1 million. And that's where they hemorrhage the second point. The second point of hemorrhage is about $1 million per partner. And at that point, they need to start really offloading the C and D class clients to somebody else and nurturing a client manager to come through to handle the A and B class clients. So it is a long-term investment. It is a long-term strategy, moving people across, educating them. But if you spend a lot of your time educating your staff, then you're spending time in your balance sheet, not just your P&L. And then eventually you'll come around. The more time you spend training them, the quicker it will happen. The less time you spend time with them, and the more you get dragged in front of the client, then you're taking time away from training them. And then the slower it's going to take you to step away from, hands-on. But the first thing is to get rid of the C and D class clients on the communication side. So someone in the team's got to have the potential to be a client manager with good interpersonal skills, and you've got to start training that person, start going into meetings with that person, with the C and D class clients, and start offloading the C and D class clients to this person, and then you can hang on to the A and Bs. And then as this person moves up, then you introduce them to the A and B class clients, and then you keep stepping back slowly. So it could take months, or it could take years. Just depends on how determined you are. Like today, we've got around 9,000 paying clients and 17,000 all up on our database, and the other half of it are prospects. And I don't see any clients at all. But initially, when the practice was really small and they all saw me, yes, it was hard to extract myself out, because they got so used to dealing with me. But what I found was 80% of the clients just wanted you to show some leadership, and they just basically wanted you to say, well, tell me who to deal with, and they'll deal with that person. So when I brought the client manager in with me, or the trainee client manager with me into the meetings, 80% of them would just gravitate to the client manager. 20% of them wouldn't. They just kept coming back to me. And we talk about early adopters, middle adopters, and late adopters. Mm-hmm. So the ones that kept coming back to me, they were middle adopters, and I had to introduce them to the client manager 4 or 5 or 6 times. And then eventually around, 16% of them eventually went across, and then the last less than 4% just insisted on seeing me.
Right.
And then I then had to make a decision, and it's really just a handful. And then I had to make a decision whether, I just saw them or I persisted. And generally those clients are really, high maintenance clients, and they're really D-class clients. They don't pay you, they whinge, they complain. They're just high maintenance clients, and they consume 80% of your time. And they represent less than 4%, but they'll consume 80% of your time. So I got to a point where, I delegated them to a client manager, and whenever they called and left a message, I got the client manager to ring them back, and they sent me an email, got the client manager to respond with an answer. And eventually they either did one or two things. They either left, which was great because, they were really high maintenance clients. And the other things was that they then started dealing with the staff. And then you'll get one or two who are really, really bad, all right? And you then got to make an effort to move them on. Like, you've got to make the effort to move them on. And the best thing you do is go down and get the business card of your worst competitor, the one that you hate the most, and give them that business card because they'll screw up your business. It's better that they screw up your competitor's business than to screw up your business. So you then got to get up and actually do something about those ones. And they're generally just a handful. They're really, really recalcitrant.
It's an interesting point, actually, because we've been, Jamie, we've been talking about this a little bit in the last week, and seeing accountants in particular forums talking about how to manage difficult clients. I mean, we've all got one or more, but I found it interesting that a lot of the responses were immediate, just sack them, get rid of them, sack them. And I mean, a particular scenario yesterday was, I'm a small business, we're growing, but I've got a $30,000 a year fee paying client who I'm having trouble with. And 80% of the responses was, just get rid of them straight away. Now, how do you approach that? Because, I mean, yes, it's the right answer in some cases where you've got the really bad ones, but how would you normally approach when you get asked that question? Should I just sack the client, or how do you manage the situation?
In my case, it sort of depends on the size of the client, what value that they're worth to the firm. If there's a long-standing history and what's changed. So there's any number of variables around it. But first of all, you want to speak to the client face to face. Emails. We have an internal policy and procedure that any sensitive matters are not to be communicated, with the clients via email. That's the first thing. So once you sort of do all the fact find out exactly what the issue is, whether it's within your business or fact find from the client, meet with the client and see if you can address the problem, solve the problem. If it's scope, seep or creep, which some of the forums were talking about, you just go to the client and try and solve it. Whether that's increase the fee or not delivering service, whatever it is. But the worst thing you can do is shoot off an email. That's the worst thing you can do. So you want to build that emotional bank account to see if you can resolve it. If it can't resolve, and you try a few times, then as Ed said, that if it can't be resolved, sometimes that it's worth perhaps that client doesn't have the same values as you, and then they're probably not a good fit for the firm. But the other thing I wanted to say, Brent, just coming back to this bottom-up management, was when I started working with Ed, one of the best things that I used to do was that I'd have a little, I'd printed off some words, what am I working on? And I'd stick that on the wall. And so every day I'd have a self-awareness around a task I was doing from a practical sense. And the listeners watching will hopefully get something out of this, is that I'd say, this task that I'm doing right now, should I be doing it? So every day, I think for 2 years, I still do it now. I would say, should I be doing this I return? Should I be doing these financial statements? Should I be doing my own bookkeeping? And so with that pasted in front of me on the wall, a lot of the times I say, you know what, I've done this 1,000 times. It's time that I stayed back tonight and build a system so that, Joe over there knows how to do this and I don't have to do it. And so as soon as I thought that, I'd stop working in quad 1 and I'd go and start working in quad 2, and I'd type up a procedure, a policy, or do a video, and then I'd go home really happy because I knew, tomorrow I'm going to show Joe how to do that, and next time I don't have to do that the 1,000 times that I've done that in the last 5 years. So that bottom-up management, to get the bottom-up management working, and I think Ed will agree, you've got to take the time out, as busy as you are, work in the quad 2, get the system going, get the video working, the SOP or whatever it is, develop it, train the person how to do it, and next time when you come to the next month or the next week, or that same person that I return that you've been doing for the last 10 years, or you've done the introduction, whatever it is, the quad 2 effort that you go to, sure enough, you've just moved yourself out of quad 1 and into quad 2. And essentially that is designing bottom-up management. And that's at a real everyday practical sense. One of the things, Ed, that we cover in the Wize, the Vault, for example, and a lot of the subscribers may have seen it, but is the list that you did for us, Ed, where we all listed what we did in a month, and some of us had 50 things that we did. And there's a spreadsheet in there, guys, that you can do. You can put. Then we classified it, Ed, remember, between quad 1 and quad 2, and every board meeting would bring this this quad 1 and quad 2 list out, Brent, and okay, Jamie, what have you moved out of your quad 1 area? Might be Craig or Darren. I'm looking at the names there. Next month, Kenneth, what have you moved out of your quad 1 area? Tell me what you've moved. And you might share that with a colleague or share it with yourself, for example. Oh, you know what? This month I've moved these 5 quad 1 items. They've gone and they're over here because Joe's doing them, and I'm working more in quad 2. So in a practical sense, when you move out of quad 1 and move into quad 2, you are designing the bottom-up management. And Ed, you would agree with that comment? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%, Jamie.
Yeah.
Like you remember when the boys, your client managers, kept saying to me that they couldn't do any more than they were doing, and they were handling around 300 grand in fees. Well, my team here handles around 950,000. So they were saying to me they couldn't do any more when they were doing 300, when I knew that they could do 900. But they were just drowning in quad A activities. And give you some examples, they were doing the tax returns themselves, right?
Yeah, even face-to-face tax returns. Yeah.
Yeah. They were doing face-to-face tax returns. They were doing the grinding. They were doing the bank recs. That one of them was even doing lodgement of tax returns. So you may recall, Jamie, I got them to write everything that they were doing on a piece of paper, and
including me.
Yeah, including you.
Yeah.
And then we put all those activities into either quad A, B, C, or D. We got rid of D and C, got rid of them all, just don't do them. And then we looked at A and B. And with A is to try and get out of doing A. So A are things like, putting out fires. And if someone drops their tax returns in the like a BAS return the night before it's due, all right, so the quad A activities put the fire out. In other words, bust your backside to get it done, to lodge it on time so it doesn't get a penalty. The quad B activity is to educate the client not to do that again, because you've got other clients that you need 2 months to 2 weeks time to do it, and put in a process so that when it comes leading up to it, you're calling them and reminding them they've got to get their work in. So that kind of activity is preventative activity. So training someone to do it, managing the client's expectations, they're all quad B activities. They're important, but they're not urgent. But the more you do of the important but not urgent activities, like a month before it's due, ring them and say, you're ready to bring your work in now. Have you got it all ready? No, it's due on this day, right? All those kind of activities will reduce having to work in quad A, which is putting fires out. Training someone to do that I return. Training the clients not to come in to get the work done face to face, but to drop the work off, right? That's all educational stuff. They're all quad B activities. And the more you do in quad B activities, the less you do in quad A. And you remember, they were struggling to do 300. Now they're doing a lot more. And same as our team. Our teams do $950, $1 million, and they do it hands down because they've also educated their team to do the grinding work. And so it goes down. That's called bottom-up management because you're working on quad B and not quad A. And just wanted to touch on just the bad clients that we talked about. It's really hard to differentiate between a client that's simply recalcitrant and a client that just needs more education and more training and changing their habits. So if they're used to coming to see you and you say to them, look, I'd like you to see this client manager, if they say no to you, then they could just be a middle adopter, or a late adopter. Like I'm a middle adopter. I don't change very quickly. It takes me a while to change. But those people are worth investing in. They're worth persisting with, and they're worth putting up and continually to train them and encourage that they should use the client manager. And some of them will take you 5 or 6 or 7 times. Others will take you 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 times. And the really, really late adopters might take you 30 times. But when they do change, right, then they're really, really good clients because they're very, very loyal, right? And then the ones that just won't change after 30 times of doing it, then they fall into the, more the recalcitrant, the ones that you need to get rid of. But I don't